All right, so I'm back for another reaction video. In this particular news clip, you have a couple that makes a combined income of around $200,000, and they're having trouble buying a home as first-time home buyers. Now, I don't know if this news clip was misreported or if all parties involved are just or uneducated when it comes to the home buying process and what's available out there. So I'm going to play the clip, and there are several things here that I want to go over in reference to this clip.
Talk about the American dream, a new series where we're looking at the promises that a lot of people think about when they think of the promise of America and whether or not those promises are actually happening for people. This week, it's about housing. Really part of the definition of what the American dream is. Work hard, save money, then buy a house. Maybe have your family in that house. But that milestone is becoming more and more out of reach for a lot of us. First-time homebuyers made up the smallest percentage ever last year, only about 25%. So why is that happening? And more importantly, is it going to change? NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has the story.
In housing markets all over the country, big and small, coastal and inland, there's a riddle that first-time homebuyers like Kevin Lederer of Orlando are trying to solve. When did your reality come crashing down on trying to buy a house?
About 2 years ago when I started making offers and getting outbid nonstop.
How do you navigate higher home prices?
Okay, so he originally started buying his home during the pandemic, which, as we all know, during the pandemic, people were taking a lot of that free money that was in the economy. For example, if you had a primary, somebody with a primary income, let's just say, for example, a husband in a household, but then the wife was getting the unemployment money, they were taking that free unemployment money and putting it down on top of their offer. Therefore, outbidding a lot of people. This is going on, all throughout the country. So buying during the pandemic, if you're a first timer, I'm pretty sure that was a bad experience for most people.
Stiff competition, and now an uptick in interest rates, all climbing in the last few years. Increasingly, the answer for millions is simple. You don't.
Everyone has the hope of owning a house. Is this shattering that illusion for many families?
Somewhat, yeah. Being a 31-year-old, recently married, having our first child, raising a family, like you want to have that American dream of having a home that you can build a family in.
It's not as if Kevin, who works in private investigative services, and his wife Hayden, a 28-year-old wedding coordinator, haven't been trying. The new parents saved up for a down payment for years and collectively make just under $200,000 annually. Still, it's not enough.
The typical.
Okay, so two things here. The first thing, they said they saved up for a down payment. That is, I'm thrilled. Like, that is a smart thing to do. However, every state, including Florida, they all have down payment assistance programs. I'll put the link in the description where you can find the down payment assistance for your area if you're looking to buy a home as a first-time home buyer. And they may not be educated on first-time home buyer assistance, or their agent or their lender, which a lot of times the agents and the lenders don't know anything about first-time home buyers assistance. Okay, now it's a specialized knowledge that myself and a few others have, that when it comes to buying your first home, for example, here in the state of Maryland, they'll pay your down payment, they'll pay your closing costs, and they'll pay off your student loans, and you don't have to pay the money back unless you move within 5 years. So every year, a portion of that money, like between 18 and 20%, is forgiven. Okay. Now every state does it their way because it's their money, but again, it's available in every state, and I'll put the link to that in the description. The second thing, they're right at or right under $200,000. Okay, if they can't find a home to afford, that tells me one of two things. Number one, they have too much debt. Because if you make $200,000 a year, you can pretty much almost get $1 million home if your monthly debt obligations are very low. Because $1 million home, depending on the interest rate, is going to cost you between $5,000 and $7,500 a month, right? So $200,000 a year is about $16,000. If you're on W-2, maybe you're bringing home like 12. Again, you can get a pretty nice pre-approval with $200,000 a year. But if they can't find a home with $200,000 a year, that tells me that their debt to income ratio may be slightly off and is pushing their pre-approval down. What affects your debt to income ratio? Car notes, personal loans, credit cards, Okay, any type of debt, student loan debt, other debt can affect your debt to income ratio, because the way it works is they look at how much you're bringing in monthly versus how much you're obligated to pay monthly, and they have a ratio that they cannot exceed. And if your monthly debts, push this ratio to the max, well, then they lessen your pre-approval. That's how it works.
First-time home buyer, the share actually dropped to the lowest level we've ever recorded in our 41-year history of the report. We also saw that the age jumped to the highest we've ever seen before.
To give you some better perspective, just over a quarter of homes sold between July of 2021 and the end of June 2022 were purchased by first-time buyers. That's a dramatic drop from the historic benchmark of 40%. And the average age, normally around Kevin and Hayden's, is now up to 36. Housing experts say part of the problem can be traced to rents soaring along with inflation, sapping savings, as well as the fact that first-time home buyers aren't facing an even playing field.
First-time home buyers, they do not have home equity to begin with. And we know that repeat buyers, they do have home equity. They already have a house.
All of these factors have thrown a wrench in many plans, along with geography in Kevin's case. The top two states for new residents are Texas and Florida, and a flood of new people means more demand and higher prices.
Meanwhile, they're saying on YouTube that Texas and Florida real estate is crashing. Yeah, okay.
Before the pandemic, the same sort of houses that you were looking at, that you were unable to buy, how much would they have cost?
$250,000, $275,000. Now,
How much are they now?
Close to $400,000.
And the younger generation needs more help than ever to get a down payment. The latest National Association of Realtor numbers show more than a quarter are staying with friends or family to save for a down payment. And the majority are making sacrifices, cutting back on luxury goods, clothes, and entertainment to save up. But it's unclear if first-time homebuyers might catch a break in the market as mortgage rates have fluctuated. But industry experts are predicting 30-year fixed mortgages are expected to drop by the beginning of next year.
That allows for more buying power. Also, we see less competition in the marketplace. So those bidding wars and the lines out the door to see one home and timed entries, those are really ideas of last year.
A tidal wave of obstacles could finally show signs of turning.
I would have thought I would have bought a house by now. I would have already invested into that. But the hope is that we can get the house that I think that my family and I deserve.
And that is a glimmer of optimism for this couple and so many like them who just started their search at the wrong time.
I want to bring in Sam Brock, who is live for us now. Sam, it's such interesting.
See, it's very possible for them. Unfortunately, with the news business, it's all about, the narrative, the negativity, but never the solution. And again, like I said, there is a solution. And, Florida's a tough market. But again, if you have down payment assistance and you have cash to put down along with that you've saved, you're in a very good position. But the down payment assistance will make it a lot easier for you. And that way you can move to the home with money in the bank and not have to spend all of your money on a down payment, which the average down payment can be anywhere from 3%, like one of those low down payment conventionals, then 3.5% on the FHA, all the way up to 25% conventional, which most people don't do that. Most people do the 3.5% down.
Reporting here, and I think people might wonder, there's a lot of factors that go into this, right? Where people live, who they are. Are we seeing this kind of across the board among all first-time home buyers, this issue?
Certainly when it comes to background and ethnicity, we're not held. The National Association of Realtors crunched the numbers and found that communities of color are absolutely disproportionately impacted by these headwinds. And when you dig a little bit deeper, it's for different reasons. The African-American community, for example, almost 1 out of every 2 buyers in that community is doing so for the first time. So when you talk about who's being sidelined, African-Americans are over-indexing on not being able to access homes right now. Asian Americans is another example here. Many of them live in very high cost of living areas. Think Northern Virginia, the San Francisco Bay Area. So they also are being priced out. But the reality at the end of the day is that there is so much competition right now and so many different things that are pushing against the average person just to try to realize this dream, that far too many people right now are living with their parents and trying to save enough money to even get the down payment to compete. But competition right now is tough.
Talk more about that, right? Because you're talking about a couple of different things, some of which are intractable, which is, for many people, I shouldn't say that, I don't want to generalize. Sometimes it is an issue of generational wealth, right? Hand it down. If your parents owned a house and leave it to you or whatever, right? If you have a family that can give you the money for the down payment, a lot of people don't have a family that can give money for a down payment, right? I mean, there's so many systemic issues that go into this, and then there's the competition factor.
Again, misreported, miseducation. The state has free money and they will lend this money to you to use as a down payment. And again, I will put the link in the description for you to check out these programs for your state.
Which I'm interested in hearing more about from you.
100%. So let's talk about the competition factor first. According to the National Association of Realtors, last spring, it was about 5.5 bids per home listing. And that has come down to about 2 or 3. But when I was talking with Kevin and Hayden, they told me there was one house that was reasonably priced in Orlando. Everyone seemed to want it. There were more than 50 bids on one house. How are you supposed to compete in that environment unless you're an all-cash buyer and going way over asking? And to your point about generational wealth, yeah, exactly. If you have parents that can help you, or also, this is a key point too, home equity. If you already have a house, you have that nest egg that you can transport with you to bid on another house. That's a huge leg up. But if you don't, if you're just starting from scratch, with the rents the way they are right now, it's sapping people's...
All right, so he mentioned transferring the home equity, right? So it's not that simple, okay? Here's the thing. When you pull the equity out of your home, it's you're taking on more debt. So again, that brings you back to the issue of debt to income ratio, and it slightly changes what you can be approved for the next home. Okay? So, I get it. It's a lot more complicated than they're making it sound. But of course, if you have rich parents, that changes the ball game. But for somebody to pull the equity from their home and then use that, of course, for the down payment, but it can also disqualify you from buying the next home, because that home equity line of credit, or, however you do it, refinance, is going to show up on your credit as, higher debt. And that changes your debt to income ratio. So it's not always that cut and dry.
Savings.
And it also depends on how much money you make too. That also matters.
They don't have the money to compete. And that's why it is not an even playing field.
Yeah, it is not for the faint of heart when you're talking about things like waiving contingencies, waiving inspections, waiving financing, which a lot of buyers want to
Never waive your inspection, ever. It's not that serious.
See, or sellers for competitive bids. Sam Brock, it is a fascinating look at all of this. Thank you for kicking off our American Dream series for us here.
All right, so, it was a lot that was said in this news clip. But again, if you have a low debt and you make $200,000 a year, or just under $200,000 a year, there's a lot of opportunity out here for you. And the second thing is, I'll put the link in the description. Look for the first-time home buyers assistance. It's pretty much free money. It may not be like Maryland where it's forgivable, but it may be deferred at 0% interest in your state. It's always one of those two things in most states. Either it's deferred at 0% interest, or it's forgivable over time. Okay. Being educated on these things and strategizing on your way into buying a home is the smart way to do it. A lot of people just jump out there. They may get with an agent that's just after money. So it's, they're pushing them and pulling them in all types of directions. These lenders, not all of them are educated on these first-time home buyers programs, but it's good for you as the home buyer to know these things. It's good for you if you're a real estate agent and you're watching this to know these things, because you can give your buyers an advantage by using these programs. It's that simple. And I always, tell buyers, hey, look into first-time home buyer assistance, especially in Maryland, because they'll pay your down payment, your closing costs, and if you have student loans, they'll pay those off too. And you don't have to pay the money back. You can't beat that. So knowing the programs in the area that you live in, or knowing the programs in the areas that you're moving to, is, it can put you at an advantage, because most people don't.